But yeah, of course, that brings me to Twitter to steal content, right? So I saw this tweet, and I feel like this is an evergreen topic. The idea in the FGC that the better player can lose because of the game character is strange to me. It feels like a scrubby excuse to write off why you lost, but it's really prevalent in the community, and the weirdest thing is that you hear it from good players. What do you all think? Like we were just talking about, I think the pitfall that people fall into is this concept of better player. You really can't get hung up on this idea, and it's something that could be to the detriment of your own growth and can lead you to not comprehending what's going on in the game. We're just having a debate right now about what it means to be a better player and what being a good player means, right? It's very subjective. I mean, there's some trends that you could follow. Like if you were to suggest that someone in bronze rank is better than Daigo, I think the entire planet would be like, no, you're wrong. But then you start to split hairs when it comes to, you know, the top level players, who's better than who has better head-to-head records. You know, there's no objective metric to go based off of. You kind of have to follow trends and then apply your own subjective evaluation to those objective results and then go from there. Being better or not, it's not really important. The important thing is that you continue to gain knowledge and improve as a player so that you can solve whatever problems presented to you in the first place. So yeah, in my view, players that are the better player from my subjective evaluation can definitely lose to players who are worse. I think that happens all the time. It's called an upset, right? How many times has a player who's been favored to win a tournament lose to somebody and then they immediately lose to the next person in the bracket who the favored player beats 100% of the time, right? Upsets can happen. It's really not unheard of, and it's just variance. And part of what can cause an upset is lack of matchup knowledge. So getting a character that you're not familiar with in bracket and losing to them, yes, the player who may be by most people's metrics better can lose to a worse player, but that's still the fault of the player who loses. It's not a linear level up. I think people get this concept of, oh, I'm a level 89 Street Fighter player, I'm a level 73 Street Fighter player, and then, you know, whoever has the highest level wins. There's a reason why we actually play out brackets and just don't seed them and then automatically float the number one seed to the victory and, you know, put them up on the podium and hand them the trophy, right? You actually have to play out the matches because variance happens, and you have to prove that you can actually win and solve the problem presented every single time. And yeah, part of that is matchup knowledge. And if you get presented a problem that you're not ready to solve, even if you know 99% of the game, if the opponent that you're playing against has less overall game knowledge and therefore is objectively less good at the game because they know less about it, but they are really good at that 1% that you aren't prepared to deal with, they can beat you. It's very difficult to be prepared for everything, especially in the way tournaments are structured with open brackets. There's a lot to learn about games, and you might be focusing on certain aspects and certain character matchups and certain player types that you're focusing on in that moment. And then you get thrown a curveball and you just lose. That can easily happen. But I think this is the part that both the people getting salty about losing, saying that I'm the better player and I shouldn't have lost, get hung up on. Don't get caught up in these labels. You could easily lose to somebody who, by most people, would call weaker than you if you're not ready. Anyone can get got at any time. And that's why you have to constantly improve, constantly learn more about the game. And there's been plenty of examples about that. Like, I hate to throw this one out to throw Wolfgang under the bus, but Mena, who won Capcom Cup shortly after EVO, and it's the only two-time Capcom Cup champion, he lost to Wolfgang at EVO playing Blanca. And Mena said, yeah, he wasn't as prepared for the Blanca matchup. Wolfgang is an extremely strong player, so I don't want to say he's just a bad player, but I think Mena, he's close to the tier of Mena, but Mena has proven to be just a cut above pretty much the entire planet in these past couple of years. He lost to Wolfgang. I would call that an upset, and I would say part of that upset is definitely fueled by him not really being prepared for the matchup. Punk posted that video where he lost to the Honda player 3-0 in bracket and then hounded him for a money match and then beat him like 7-2 or 7-3 in the run back because he labbed the matchup. He got bodied in tournament and he wasn't prepared for Honda. The Honda player presented a problem. He got smoked free in tournament and then won the set after. And the Honda is relatively unknown or completely unknown in the Street Fighter community. Punk has won a billion tournaments and is extremely consistent. Most people would objectively say, or most people would assume that Punk is objectively better than the Honda player, even though he lost, right? And it happens. It happens. Punk didn't do his homework on the Honda matchup. The Honda Salt is real. Yeah, that was happening to me for sure when Street Fighter 6 first dropped. Listen, I've been playing Street Fighter since like 2010, 2009, and I was losing to a lot of Hondas who I could tell were using like 3 tools consistently, and that's all they knew were those 3 tools, and they didn't deviate away from that whatsoever. And I would lose to them because I didn't know how to deal with that. And then I slowly learned how to counter headbutt, counter butt slam, and learn to deal with Honda Drive Rush. And then once I did that, I stopped losing to those players, right? A lot of them never adapted. A lot of them stayed doing only those 3 things because that's what their strength was. But I was losing to them, and I've been playing fighting games for over a decade, and I was losing to people who I felt like were, not necessarily doing the most complex game plans. Yeah, it sucked in the beginning, but then you just kind of have to go to training mode and practice against it, learn to perfect parry the headbutts, how to DI them. If they do a heavy headbutt from full screen, you get a full combo. So not only did I learn how to counter the tools, I learned how to optimize my combos better so that I could punish them harder for making mistakes and playing risky, so that they got less turns to do risky moves and risky play styles. So it happens to all of us. And not like I said, I've beaten players that I think are better than me. I have a few tournament wins on players who I think are much more consistent, have much better results than me overall. I would say that they're probably the better player, even though I'm a threat to them. I can cause an upset, right? So I've been on both sides of the equation, right? And I think that happens for everybody. Look at the start of Street Fighter 6 is a lot easier to get away with the risk compared to like in a year when people get comfortable. Sure, I mean, you can rely on lack of matchup knowledge. I think that's another thing to always ask yourself, right? Like, even when you win, you can evaluate the quality of your wins. And that's something that I do a lot, right? I don't know if you guys pay attention, but I'll mention like, oh, I only won because they dropped their combo, or oh, they don't know about this matchup. That's another key takeaway, right, from this tweet, this idea. It's okay to beat people for not knowing the matchup, but I think you need to understand when that is, and in fact you should use that to your advantage. When I know a character very well, there are certain situations where I can pick up on where I'm like, oh, they don't really know this matchup that well. Because they don't know the matchup this well, I can use more gimmicks and tricks to take a shortcut to victory, because they're not going to understand how to deal with it. It's good to understand, like, hey, yes, I beat X player who's really strong, but they're definitely unfamiliar with the matchup. That's good to know because you can use that to your advantage. And also, you need to understand when people know the matchup very well, that certain tactics won't work as effectively, right? Having that awareness of where your opponent stands versus you is actually really useful to know. And it'll also keep you improving, right? If you win with unsafe gimmicks that people who know the matchup know how to beat, and then you never evolve from that, you're gonna plateau so hard. Like, you need to be able to have the next layer ready for when someone has the answers for all of your tricks. You have to have that ready. Have your tricks and then have the counter to people who know to deal with your tricks. And then be honest with yourself about that. I think having that sort of self-awareness with your wins is very important. Like, if you just say, oh, I won because I'm better, then I don't think you're going to learn from your wins. You did 13 unsafe things that the opponent dropped the punish or didn't know how to punish, and it's like, well, maybe you are better, but also your opponent has this one hole in their game plan where if they plug that, suddenly you're going to have nothing left to offer. You're one training mode session away from being bodied, right? So it's important to have a little bit of self-awareness with that as well. So there are definitely character dynamics across games where one player in a given matchup has to be significantly better than the other player. Why is that offensive to say? I think a lot of like players, especially when they're newer in the scene, are playing for the respect of others. And then when they don't get that respect, when they achieve things that they find meaningful to them, they get really hurt by that. And they start to, it's like their Joker moment where they say, oh, I see what the FGC is really all about. When really they should just be like, dude, no one fucking likes to lose. No one's gonna be like, oh my god, you showed me a new light, the new heights that fighting games can go. I never realized the art, the spectacle of fighting games until your gameplay blessed me. Like, I think that's what happens to most newer players in the scene. They feel like when they win that it's like such a momentous occasion, and then they get hit with the reality that people just get salty when you beat them. Also, if you start beating somebody and you think, oh yeah, I'm the better player now, and then they challenge you and they beat you, it's gonna hurt your ego. You set yourself up for failure. I think the goal of any fighting game competitor is to aim for consistency long term, and you have to keep learning and keep patching up holes in your game knowledge and your game plan as you go. And players will exploit that. Players that might be quote unquote worse players might be just the right fit for a hole in your game plan, and you get bodied for it. So this comes up all the time. This is a distraction. Better, worse, distraction. Just keep learning, keep growing, and the results will follow. If you lose to somebody who you feel is bad, all you got to do is look back at the match footage and think about what you lost to and learn the mechanics of what caused you to lose and learn to counter them better and learn how to run your own game plan better to prevent it from happening again, right? So, not saying that I'm a perfect saint either. I definitely get salty when I feel like I lose to players that are, I feel like I'm better than. Happens to all of us. But just don't get caught up on that. And I also think, like, be understanding of people getting salty. It's super normal. But this topic, I think we have like 5 videos about this on the YouTube channel. Don't worry about being better. Just worry about knowing more. Knowledge is power. Doubly so in fighting games. I caused an upset at Attorney, then dodged the rematch all weekend. I mean, you're officially the better player, and you did not give the opportunity to let them prove otherwise. No, listen. Whoever won the last set is obviously the better player. Them's the rules.